The Prime Minister has probably lost considerable support. I mean, if he loses that part of the Rift Valley votes, I mean, that's substantial. I mean, and there's also a possibility that, you know, some part of ODM is no longer with him. So it really depends on how he, or what type of action he's. I think if I was to advise the Prime Minister, I think this is the time to reconstruct his party, you know, to rally rather than, you know, divide or fight. I don't think this is the time to fight. I don't think you have the soldiers to fight. This is the time he should rebuild his party.
But rebuilding without the likes of Ruto and Balala, because it looks like, you know, it's over for them. They're already on their way out.
I mean, it's not only Ruto really or Balala. I mean, it's a whole faction of the party that seems to disengage. But I mean, you can look for other components that can replace them. I mean, he can go to Western Kenya to see whether he can. I mean, he can go to Northern Kenya. The point I'm making is that I don't think he has the tools to fight a political war this time. What he needs is to build his base, which is sort of crumbling.
Yeah. The other thing, Ahmednasir, that we found out from the shenanigans, the circus this past weekend, is that we're still extremely tribal as Kenyans.
I mean, that really goes without saying. I mean, if you look at the legal experts, whether they are university lecturers or lawyers, and read the papers, what their views on this circus is, you will find that people have just gone tribal. I mean, someone will say the Prime Minister has these powers just because the Prime Minister is from his ethnic group. Someone will say that the Prime Minister doesn't have his power because he belongs to this. I mean, it's a very tragic, you know, scene to see that Kenyans, no matter how educated they are, no matter how enlightened they may seem, are very, very ethnic.
Yeah, and it looks like we haven't learned anything from 2007, 2008. I mean, it looks like we're going back there if we're not careful.
I mean, they say we learn from history that we learn nothing from history. I mean, it's true. I mean, what have we learned? We have learned nothing. I mean, the country is the way it was. I mean, we are as divided as we were. But I think you really have to blame the leaders, because I don't think there was any proper reconciliation or even an effort to reconcile the people. There has been no effort on the political leaders to educate Kenyans on what happened, or to ensure that similar things don't happen. What our leaders are good at, and which they have been concentrating, is how to amass wealth. That they have been doing.
And that they've been very successful in.
Yes, yes, yes.
And now this diversionary tactic from things like maize and Triton, everyone is looking towards this direction, and things are happening over here.
Maize and Triton are just two. I mean, this country is bristling with scandals, you know. I mean, there are so many corruption things that are happening nobody's aware of, or nobody's enlightened. I mean, this country is rich. That's why it's not breaking up. Yeah. Everybody in his own corner, in his own ministry, is pulling a Triton or a maize scam.
And nobody's talking about it.
Nobody's talking about it.
Are we to blame for that in a way, the media? Are we to blame because we're not highlighting some stories that we should be?
Absolutely. I think the Kenyan media have forgotten completely about investigative journalism. I mean, if you look at the main papers, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, it's just the same story you see on the TV. I mean, if you look at the Sundays papers or the weeklies or the dailies, Kenyan journalists have forgotten completely the need to investigate scams or even political stories that are happening behind the scene.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ahmednasir, where did we go wrong? I mean, you say Kenya is such a rich country, and it is, because if we weren't, we would be another failed state. We still keep plugging on. The country's still moving on. But where did we go wrong? Did we lack leadership? Where did we go wrong?
I think we go wrong every year once during the election period. I mean, that's the time you can reconstruct the country according to what you think is right, or elect the people you think are the right leaders. I mean, that is the time we go wrong. That's the only time. Because when the election comes, everybody will vote for his tribal or for a person who can buy his vote. That's all. I mean, if you are a poor man with principles, with great ideas, where will you go? You cannot even become a councillor.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the tragedy.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, it is a national tragedy, really. That, I mean, there is no way to ensure, or there is no actually vetting mechanism in our political system to ensure that a person who has the caliber or who can have ideas on how to improve the country can become a leader. No, no. It's either some political caucuses or some tribal chieftains that sit and then impose leaders on the people. Yeah. And the people gladly vote for that mechanism.
Okay, Ahmednasir, let me ask you, let me put this scenario to you. It looks like the tips, the balances have shifted a little bit. The Prime Minister is looking a little a little battered right now.
Wobbly.
A little wobbly, exactly. And the alliance, the KKK alliance, whatever you want to call it, is looking really strong. But few people are thinking about the Ocampo factor. Ocampo is still in this whole scenario, and he could come and still remove some people, which will balance the scales again.
I mean, my views on Ocampo are well known. I think I've written quite some time. I don't support the ICC process on a point of principle. My view is that it's a European court financed by the EU that tries Africans, you know. I mean, the only accused persons on the ICC are Africans, you know. There are 12, 13 Africans.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean that the world doesn't have criminals. I mean, but this is a court that's very intrusive. And in a way, it's because our system don't work. But my personal view is that I think we can have a mechanism in Kenya to try those persons. I mean, there's no way, there's no reason why when a prosecutor comes that the president, you know, almost loses his head, the prime minister does similar. I mean, who is Ocampo in my view? I mean,
okay, but let me ask you, our legislatures won't even pass a bill to create a special tribunal locally. They won't do that.
That's the right option. I mean, I think the issues that happen, which everybody really condemns, which everybody understands needs to be addressed, should be addressed here locally, whether it's through a tribunal or reconstituted judiciary. Because, I mean, everybody knows that it takes quite some time to try cases in Kenya. But there's no reason why we cannot sit as a country and, you know, recast our judiciary or even set certain special courts with special people mandating it that will try this special situation.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think Ocampo is completely the wrong option for me.
I want to talk more about that, Ahmednasir, and I also want to talk about the TJRC. You were talking about reconciliation a moment ago. We have a TJRC, but it's coming under a lot of heat. And also, Somalis. Big influence. They're taking over parts of Kenya. Let's talk about that after the break. A legal aspect from the former chairman of the LSK, Ahmednasir Abdullahi. He writes in the Sunday papers, his column is hot. But he says it's mild, but it's hot. Man calls it like he sees it. And we're talking legalese here on the bench. Don't even think of going away because we are back in a moment.